Darsh, the day Deathworlders proved they don't just win wars, they rule empires. Part 1. The unexpected ambassadors. Admiral Park's boots made a distinct sound against the polished floor of the observation deck. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching as the massive space station of the Galactic Confederation grew larger in the view screen. The station resembled a glittering jewel against the darkness of space, its elegant spires and domes reflecting the light of the nearby star. "It's beautiful," said Lieutenant Ryu, coming to stand beside her. "Hard to believe they've been avoiding contact with us for so long." Park nodded. Beauty often hides fear. The Confederation has spent decades keeping humanity at arm's length. They only call us now because they're desperate. The human diplomatic vessel, the HSS Resilience, was small compared to the grand ships of the Confederation, but its hull bore the scars of meteorite impacts and radiation storms, badges of honor from its journey through the dangerous regions of space that most Confederation ships carefully avoided. Captain Kim approached, datapad in hand. "Final briefing is ready, Admiral. The team wants to know how honest we should be about Earth's conditions." Park turned from the view, her weathered face serious. "We tell the truth. If they're going to work with us, they need to understand what shaped us." The diplomatic team gathered in the conference room, 12 humans chosen for their mix of military experience and diplomatic skills. On the wall screens, images of various alien species flickered. The gentle Alarans with their floating tentacles, the insectoid Vesperi with their compound eyes, the tree-like Arbori whose movements resembled swaying branches. All from planets, with stable climates, predictable seasons, and minimal natural disasters. "They call Earth a death world," Park told her team, gesturing to a holographic image of their blue home planet. "To them, our world is a nightmare, constantly shifting. Tectonic plates, violent weather patterns, varied predators, microscopic pathogens, extreme temperature ranges, everything that made our evolution a challenge. And now they need those challenges," said Diplomat Choi, the team's lead negotiator. His soft voice carried surprising weight. The Tauran Empire wouldn't be a threat to species that evolved with adversity. The ship docked with surprising gentleness. As the team prepared to disembark, last-minute communications arrived from Earth Command. Park read them and sighed. "Intelligence suggests the Tauran attacks are accelerating. 3 more outer systems fell while we were in transit. The Confederation Welcoming Committee consisted of 6 different species, their body language showing various degrees of discomfort at the humans' presence. The lead greeter, an Alaran named Peltho whose tentacles curled anxiously, extended a formal welcome. "The Confederation appreciates Earth's response to our invitation," Peltho said, voice translator struggling with the diplomat's nervous tones. "Please follow us to decontamination." "Decontamination?" Kim whispered to Park. "They act like we're carrying plagues." "To them we might be," Park replied quietly. "Remember, their immune systems never faced our evolutionary pressures." The humans followed protocol patiently, understanding the fears of species who had never needed to develop robust defense mechanisms against disease. After medical scans that seemed excessive even by human standards, they were escorted to the Grand Council chamber. The chamber itself took Park's breath away, a vast dome with walls that seemed to shimmer with living light, representatives from dozens of worlds seated in rising tiers. Many visibly recoiled as the humans entered. High Minister Velara, a tall, willowy being with silver skin that reflected the chamber's light, addressed them from the central podium. "Humans of Earth, we acknowledge your journey here. The situation has become untenable. The Tauran Empire has broken through our outer defenses. They share your physical resilience." Park stepped forward. "Minister, the Taurans may be strong, but humanity offers more than just strength. We bring adaptability, innovation under pressure. We've survived our challenging world not just through physical evolution, but through problem-solving and cooperation." As she spoke, Park could see the skepticism in many alien faces. They saw humans as necessary barbarians, useful in a crisis but fundamentally dangerous. The diplomatic discussions stretched for hours, The Confederation representatives were cautious, offering limited information about their military capabilities and clearly reluctant to grant humans any significant role in the conflict. During a break, Lieutenant Ryu approached Park with fresh data. The Taurans have a distinctive attack pattern. They hit hard, then regroup in very specific formations. Almost like, before he could finish, alarms blared throughout the station. Red emergency lights pulsed along the corridors. The chamber's beautiful walls displayed tactical data. A Tauran battle fleet had jumped into the system without warning. Panic erupted among the Confederation representatives. Many froze in place, their species unaccustomed to sudden dangers. Others began complex bureaucratic discussions about evacuation protocols. Park locked eyes with her team. No words were needed. Within moments, the humans were moving with practiced efficiency. Captain Kim secured communication channels with the human ship. Lieutenant Ryu accessed the station's defense grid. Diplomat Choi began calmly organizing confused aliens into groups. "This way to the emergency shuttles," Park directed, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Remain calm and move quickly." As frightened representatives hurried past, High Minister Velara stared at Park with new understanding. "You're not afraid," she said. Park helped a fallen Vesperi to its feet. "We're trained for crisis. It's what Earth taught us." The first explosion rocked the station. And in that moment of true danger, the humans showed what Deathworlders were made of. Not just strength and resilience, but the ability to think clearly when everything fell apart. The day Deathworlders proved they don't just win wars, they rule empires. Part 2. Trial by Fire. The emergency command center of the Confederation station buzzed with frantic activity. Screens displayed the advancing Tauran fleet, 30 warships in tight formation, their hulls gleaming with strange metallic patterns that seemed to absorb scanner beams. Admiral Park stood before the main tactical display, studying the enemy movements while Confederation officers argued loudly around her. "We must retreat to the inner systems," insisted Commander Velnoran, his feathered crest rising with agitation. "The defense fleet cannot withstand a direct assault of this magnitude." "Retreat means abandoning 3 habitable worlds to the Taurans," countered another officer, a bulky amphibian whose skin changed colors with his emotions. Currently a stressed orange, Park remained silent, watching the projected paths of the Tauran ships. Something about their formation nagged at her tactical mind. Captain Kim approached, keeping his voice low. "They're ignoring standard ship spacing," he noted. "Almost like they're expecting to need to maneuver through hazards." Park nodded slowly. "Because on their homeworld nothing comes easy. Space is just another environment to conquer." She stepped forward, interrupting the growing argument among the aliens. "The Taurans are using a hunting formation. I've seen similar patterns in wolf packs on Earth." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. "Your defensive line is too perfect," Park continued, gesturing to the current Confederation deployment. "Too symmetrical. The Taurans will see it as artificial and suspicious. They're looking for traps because that's how they think." "What do you suggest, human?" asked Fleet Admiral Zev, an ancient being whose translucent body pulsed with bioluminescent light. Park moved her hands over the tactical display, rearranging the Confederation ships into an apparently haphazard pattern. "Asymmetry. Controlled. Chaos. Make your fleet look damaged, disorganized. The Taurans will sense weakness and attack aggressively, right here." She indicated a point in the formation. Fleet Admiral Zev's lights dimmed skeptically. "You want us to appear weak? This contradicts all Confederation military doctrine." "Sometimes strength comes from appearing weak," Park replied. "My people have an ancient saying, 'The reed that bends survives the storm, while the rigid oak breaks.'" After heated debate, a compromise was reached. A portion of the fleet would try Park's strategy while the rest maintained traditional formations. As the humans returned to their ship to join the coming battle, many Confederation officers watched with thinly veiled doubt. Aboard the HSS Resilience, now designated as a tactical command ship, Park's crew prepared for combat. The human vessel, was smaller than the massive Confederation ships but more adaptable, with systems designed to continue functioning even when damaged. Tauran fleet will enter weapons range in 7 minutes, reported Lieutenant Ryu from the sensor station. Confederation ships are in position, though some captains are still objecting to the formation. Park took her command chair. Open a channel to all ships following our tactical plan. When the connection was established, she spoke clearly. This is Admiral Park. What you're about to experience will feel wrong by your standards. Trust the plan. When the Taurans attack the apparent weakness in our formation, they'll overextend. That's when we close the trap. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic wing of the station, Diplomat Choi faced his own battle. Representatives from 17 Confederation species had gathered in an emergency session, many demanding that humans be removed from any leadership role. "The Deathworlders will get us all killed," hissed a reptilian delegate. "Their tactics are barbaric." Choi stood calmly before them, his weathered face showing none of the frustration he felt. Earth was once divided into nearly 200 separate nations, each with their own military doctrine. We fought countless wars against ourselves before learning a simple truth: adaptation wins battles. He activated a holographic display showing Earth's history of warfare, from ancient battles to modern conflicts. Every successful military force in our history learned to evolve its tactics. Those that didn't perished. The representatives watched in silence as Choi showed them footage from Earth's historical archives, armies adapting to new weapons, new terrain, new enemies. "The Taurans are beating you because they're adaptable predators, like us," Choi continued. "But humanity has something they lack. We've learned to cooperate despite our aggressive instincts. We're offering you that balance." Outside, the battle began. The Tauran fleet accelerated toward the seemingly disorganized Confederation ships. Exactly as Park had predicted, their formation tightened, focusing firepower on the perceived weakness. "They've taken the bait," Kim reported, watching the tactical display. "All ships holding position." Park leaned forward in her chair. "Wait for it. Wait." The Tauran fleet, committed fully to the attack, their rear ships accelerating to join what they believed would be a quick victory. Now, all ships execute Pattern Delta. The apparently scattered Confederation vessels suddenly moved with coordinated precision, their positions forming a perfect envelopment. The Taurans found themselves surrounded, caught in a crossfire from all directions. On the main screen, Park watched as the first Tauran ships took heavy damage. "Target their engines and weapon systems only," she ordered. "We want them disabled, not destroyed." A Confederation captain's voice came through the comm. "Why preserve enemy vessels? Confederation protocol calls for complete neutralization, because..." "Understanding your enemy is the first step to lasting peace," Park replied. "And we need to capture their technology intact to study their weaknesses." The battle raged for 3 hours. 7 Confederation ships were lost, but 23 Tauran vessels were captured or disabled. As damage reports came in, the Grand Minister of the Confederation requested Park's presence at an emergency council meeting. When she arrived, the chamber was subdued. The Grand Minister, a being of living crystal whose facets reflected the light in complex patterns, addressed her directly. "Admiral Park, your tactics were unorthodox. Many of our commanders found them disturbing." The minister paused, facets shifting. "But they were effective. The Confederation Defense Council has voted, with reluctance from some quarters, to grant humans temporary authority over the war effort." Park bowed slightly. "We accept this responsibility, Minister, but we'll need full cooperation from all Confederation forces." "You shall have it," the minister replied, though Park could hear the reservation in the translated voice. "Though I must be clear, many see you as necessary barbarians rather than true allies. Prove them wrong, Admiral." As Park left the chamber, Captain Kim fell into step beside her. "They're giving us control because they're scared," he said quietly. Park nodded. "Fear can be a beginning or an end. Our job now is to show them that humans don't just win wars through strength. We win by building something better afterward." Outside, the windows of the corridor the captured Tauran ships were being towed to Confederation docks. The first real victory against an enemy that had seemed invincible, but Park knew the harder challenge lay ahead, proving that Deathworlders could build peace as effectively as they waged war. The day Deathworlders proved they don't just win wars, they rule empires. Part 3, The Deathworld Advantage Captain. Lee stood in the captured Tauran vessel, running his hand along the strange metal of the corridor walls. Unlike the smooth, aesthetic perfection of Confederation ships, these walls had intentional texture, ridges and grooves that would provide grip even if artificial gravity failed. The air recycling systems were triple redundant. Every door had manual overrides. They build like we do, Lee said to the small team of human engineers examining the ship. For a world where things go wrong. Lieutenant Ryu nodded, studying readings on his scanner. Environmental controls are designed to handle extreme temperature fluctuations. Look at these atmospheric filters. They're built to process air filled with particulates and toxins. Admiral Park had assigned them to study the captured Tauran ships, while she coordinated with Confederation leadership. Understanding the enemy was crucial, especially an enemy that seemed eerily similar to humans in some respects. "The bridge is this way," said Technician Bay, consulting the ship's schematics they'd pieced together. The team moved carefully through the alien vessel, noting the practical utilitarian design of every system. The bridge itself was compact, with stations built close together and controls designed for quick access. No wasted space, no decorative elements, just functionality. "It's like looking at our own ships from 50 years ago," Lee observed. Before we started adding comfort features, Ryu accessed the ship's navigational data. "Got something interesting here. Their original home system, it's got a variable star, massive solar flares, radiation bursts. Their planet would be hammered regularly. Just like early Earth-facing, ice ages and asteroid impacts," Lee replied. "No wonder they're so adaptable. They had to be." Back at Confederation headquarters, Admiral Park stood before the Defense Council, presenting her findings. The chamber was tense. Their recent victory had earned humans some respect, but suspicion lingered. "The Taurans evolved on a harsh world," Park explained, displaying comparative data between Earth and the Tauran homeworld. "Not quite as challenging as Earth, but similar in many ways. Unpredictable climate, high gravity, natural disasters, aggressive predators. They became conquerors because to them, that's survival." High Commander Pelverax, whose species evolved on a world of perpetual mild summer, looked troubled. "You speak of them almost with admiration, Admiral." "Understanding isn't admiration," Park replied. "But yes, I respect their resilience, and that's why we can defeat them when you couldn't. We recognize their tactics, their psychology, in ways your species cannot." The room fell silent at her bluntness. Then Fleet Admiral Zev spoke, bioluminescence pulsing slowly. "What do you propose, human?" Park activated a holographic battle map. "A direct counteroffensive, not at their fleet positions, but at their supply lines. Deathworld species, understand resource scarcity. Cut them off and they'll be forced to adapt." "That would mean sending ships deep into territory they already control," protested one council member. "The risk is unacceptable." "Risk is relative," Park said calmly. "To a species evolved in paradise, any danger seems excessive. To humans, calculated risk is simply existence." After hours of debate, the council reluctantly approved a modified version of Park's plan. Small, fast strike teams would target Tauran supply depots, while the main fleet engaged their front lines. Human commanders would lead the most dangerous missions, with Confederation support. Preparation moved quickly. On the training deck of the station, human officers worked with mixed species crews, teaching them techniques for operating in hostile environments. "Again," instructed Captain Kim to a group of Aloran pilots whose tentacles were struggling with the modified flight controls. "In combat, you won't have time to think about the movements." Across the deck, Lee was demonstrating emergency procedures to a mixed group. "If your breathing apparatus fails, you have approximately 6 minutes before oxygen deprivation affects your judgment. Humans can push this to 8 minutes with proper techniques." A tall, graceful Vesperi raised a chitinous limb. "Why train for equipment failure? Confederation protocols call for immediate retreat in such scenarios. Because retreat isn't always possible, Lee answered. Sometimes survival means pushing through when everything goes wrong. The offensive launched 3 days later. 20 ships, half of them commanded by humans, slipped past Tauran patrols using routes that the Confederation had previously deemed too dangerous, through asteroid fields near unstable stars and along gravitational shear zones. Park monitored the operation from the command center, where tension built as the first teams went silent after reaching their targets. Hours passed. Without communication, we should assume the worst, said a Confederation admiral, his scales darkening with stress. No species could survive the conditions in those regions. Just as Park was about to respond, the communications array lit up. One by one, the strike teams reported success. Supply depots destroyed, Tauran reinforcements thrown into chaos, and minimal casualties among the attackers. The mood in the command center shifted from despair to cautious hope. But the true test came a day later, when reports arrived of a Tauran ground force landing on Viridia, an agricultural world at the edge of Confederation space. They're desperate for supplies now, Park noted. Just as we predicted. But a cornered predator is dangerous. The Confederation Council erupted in panic. Viridia's population was unequipped for defense, its environmental conditions perfect and placid. The colonists had never faced violence. We don't have enough ships in position to repel a ground invasion, said Fleet Admiral Zev. By the time we redirect the fleet, Viridia will be lost. Park studied the tactical display. We don't need the fleet. Give me 3 transport ships and my ground combat team. 200 humans against thousands of Taurans? The council was incredulous. We don't need to match their numbers, Park replied. We just need to show them something they've never seen before. 12 hours later, human combat teams touched down on Viridia's surface, equipped with Earth-made battle gear designed for maximum adaptability. The planet's perfect climate and normal gravity felt almost too easy for soldiers trained on Earth's varied terrain. The Tauran forces had already secured the main settlement and were systematically looting food stores. Their tactics were organized, efficient, and entirely predictable to the humans who had studied their captured ships. They're operating on standard search patterns, Lieutenant Ryu reported from his observation position. Just like predators, on a resource-poor world. Park gave the order to engage. What followed shocked even the hardened Confederation observers watching via satellite. The human soldiers moved through hostile fire with practiced precision, using the environment in ways the Taurans never anticipated. When standard weapons malfunctioned in Viridia's unusual magnetic fields, they adapted with improvised alternatives. When toxic gas was deployed by the Taurans, the humans simply adjusted their breathing filters and pushed through. Most surprising to the Confederation observers was the humans' ability to continue fighting, despite injuries that would incapacitate most species. A soldier with a damaged arm simply switched to single-handed weapons. Teams cut off from each other formed new effective units on the fly. Within 6 hours, the Tauran forces were surrounded. Rather than fighting to the death, Park offered terms of surrender, an unprecedented move that confused both the Taurans and the watching Confederation. In the field command post, the captured Tauran commander was brought before Park. His species resembled armored humanoids, with thick plates protecting vital areas and eyes adapted to harsh light. Why offer surrender? The Tauran asked, his translator struggling with the concept. Victor's take. That is nature's law. Park studied him thoughtfully. That's only one interpretation of nature. On Earth, we learned another. Cooperation often outperforms pure competition. Your people expanded because your world taught you that resources are scarce and must be fought for. We understand that drive. She displayed images of Earth, its deserts, mountains, stormy seas, and teeming jungles. But we found better ways to ensure survival than endless conquest. We can show you those ways, if you're willing to learn. The Tauran commander stared at the images, silent for a long moment. Your world? It's worse than ours. Harsher in many ways, Park agreed. Which is why you should consider what I'm offering. If Deathworlders like us found alternatives to Constant war, so can you. As the sun set over Viridia's perfect fields, news of the victory spread throughout the Confederation. For the first time, many species began to see humans not just as necessary savages, but as potential teachers. The Deathworld advantage wasn't just about winning fights, it was about surviving long enough to discover better solutions. The day Deathworlders proved they don't just win wars, they rule empires. Part 4, Reconstruction and Resistance. The morning sun cast long shadows across the ruins of what had once been Viridia's central administrative complex. Administrator Han stood amid the rubble, watching as mixed teams of humans and local Viridians worked side by side to clear debris. Unlike most Confederation reconstruction efforts, there were no massive automated systems here, just people working, with simple tools, learning to rebuild with their own hands. "It doesn't make sense," said Governor Talia, the willowy Viridian leader whose translucent skin reflected the sunlight in gentle patterns. "Your construction methods are so primitive. The Confederation could send automated builders that would complete this work in days." Han brushed dust from his hands. "And what happens when those automated systems break down? Or when the next attack comes?" He picked up a fallen beam, testing its weight before setting it aside. "By building this way, your people learn to repair and adapt. The structures become yours in a way no imported solution ever could." Talia watched as a human engineer showed a group of young Viridians how to test materials for structural integrity. "Your people take such a hands-on approach to everything." "Earth taught us that depending on technology alone creates vulnerability," Han replied. "The strongest systems have both technological and human components." Across the settlement, similar scenes played out. Human agricultural specialists worked with local farmers, introducing crop varieties that could withstand harsher conditions, just in case. Medical teams taught emergency procedures designed for resource-limited scenarios. None of it matched the elegant efficiency of traditional Confederation methods, but all of it emphasized resilience. In the temporary command center, a holographic display showed dozens of similar projects across 5 worlds that had suffered Tauran attacks. On each, human advisors worked alongside local populations, guiding rather than dictating the reconstruction. "The reports from Viridia are quite interesting," said Diplomat Choi, reviewing data with Admiral Park. "Productivity is lower than standard Confederation rates, but civilian satisfaction is higher." Park nodded. "Because they're part of the process, not just recipients of aid. The Viridians are proud people. All species are, in their own way. They need to feel ownership of their recovery." Choi highlighted another report. "Speaking of ownership, the Confederation Council is growing concerned about our influence. Some representatives are using phrases like human occupation and cultural interference." "Predictable," Park sighed. "We're useful when there's fighting to be done, less welcome when it's time to rebuild society." The resistance to human influence wasn't merely political. 3 days later, a human medical facility on Astoria Station was damaged by an explosion. Fortunately, no one was killed, but the message was clear. Not everyone welcomed the changes humans brought. Security footage revealed little, but Lieutenant Ryu's investigation uncovered a pattern. The explosive device used technology from 3 different Confederation species, he reported. This wasn't the work of a single malcontent. It was organized. Park studied the evidence with a frown. A coalition against human influence. Find out who's behind it, but quietly. We don't want to create more tension. Meanwhile, on the Confederation capital world, Diplomat Choi faced increasingly hostile questioning from the Interspecies Relations Committee. The chamber was packed with representatives from dozens of worlds, many clearly uncomfortable with the growing human presence in Confederation affairs. "You claim to be helping our worlds rebuild," said Councillor Drell, whose crystalline body structure caught and refracted the chamber's light. "Yet you implement systems that differ dramatically from our established methods. Some might call this cultural imperialism." Choi maintained his calm demeanor. "We offer options, not mandates. Every world is free to accept or reject our suggestions." Your suggestions come with the implicit backing of your military success, countered another counselor. Many feel pressured to comply. Before Choi could respond, the chamber doors opened to admit an unexpected guest. Talia, the Viridian, governor. She moved to the speaking platform with graceful dignity. I have traveled 3 days to address this council, she began, because I hear disturbing rumors about human intentions. Let me speak plainly about what I have witnessed. The chamber fell silent as Talia described the reconstruction of her world. The humans did not arrive with prefabricated solutions. They asked what we needed, what we valued. When our elders insisted on preserving the traditional design of our civic buildings, Administrator Han modified his plans accordingly. When our agricultural council expressed concern about new crop varieties, the humans established test plots so we could evaluate the results ourselves. She gestured to the gathered counselors. Is this the behavior of conquerors? Of imperialists? No. I have studied our history. Conquerors impose. These humans suggest, demonstrate, then allow us to choose. Despite Talia's testimony, the political situation remained tense. Back on Viridia, Han was alerted to another potential threat. Strange energy readings from an abandoned warehouse near the spaceport. Could be nothing, said the security officer who reported it. But it matches patterns we've seen before hostile acts. Han decided to investigate personally, taking only 2 assistants. The warehouse appeared empty, too empty, compared to the busy reconstruction elsewhere. As they searched the building, Han noticed subtle signs of recent activity. Dust, patterns, misaligned panels, the faint smell of unfamiliar chemicals. There's something here, he said quietly, but I don't think it's Torin. Before his team could search further, the warehouse doors sealed shut, and interior lights flashed on, momentarily blinding them. When Han's vision cleared, he found himself surrounded by armed figures, not Torans, but members of 3 different Confederation species. The human problem needs addressing, said the apparent leader, a tall arbori, whose bark-like skin was marked with official Confederation security symbols. Your influence grows too quickly. The natural order of the Confederation is being disrupted. Han kept his voice level. And your solution is what? Assassination? Terrorism? How does that maintain your precious order? Sometimes a system needs protection from invasive elements, the Arbori replied. Your species emerged from a savage world. You may have helped against the Torans, but now you threaten to remake peaceful worlds in Earth's harsh image. Han noted the positions of the conspirators, assessing options. The warehouse had been chosen carefully, isolated enough that a confrontation would go unnoticed. These weren't amateurs. If you think we're a threat, Han said, why not simply bring charges before the Confederation Council? Why resort to violence? Politics moves too slowly, hissed another conspirator. By the time the Council acts, humans will have embedded themselves throughout our systems. The confrontation was interrupted by a soft chime from Han's communicator. The conspirators tensed, weapons ready, but Han made no move to answer it. That, he said calmly, is an automatic alert indicating that everything that's happened in this warehouse for the past 20 minutes has been transmitted to both human and Confederation security channels. The conspirators exchanged worried glances. The Arbori leader stepped forward. You're bluffing. We swept for surveillance. Earth predators learned long ago to hide their tracks, Han replied, just as Earth prey learned to watch for hunters. We suspected a plot against us for weeks. Did you think we wouldn't take precautions? Outside, the sound of approaching vehicles confirmed his claim. The conspirators now faced a choice: escalate to violence or surrender. Han watched the calculation in their eyes, the weighing of options so familiar to species from challenging worlds. When Confederation security forces breached the warehouse, they found Han and his team calmly sitting with the disarmed conspirators. No shots had been fired, no blood had been spilled. Hours later, in Admiral Park's office on the Confederation station, the full scope of the conspiracy was becoming clear. Dozens of officials across multiple worlds had been involved, united by fear of growing human influence. The traditional response would be a public trial, harsh punishments, Captain Kim noted. Make an example of them. Park stared out the viewport, at the stars. And confirm everything they fear about us. No, we need a different approach. The next day, Diplomat Choi presented evidence of the conspiracy to a closed session of the Confederation High Council. The gathered leaders expected demands for justice, perhaps even threats of human withdrawal from reconstruction efforts. Instead, Choi proposed something unprecedented: amnesty for all involved, coupled with a new oversight committee where concerned species could voice their fears openly. The conspiracy's leaders would work directly with human administrators, seeing firsthand how reconstruction decisions were made. Fear thrives in darkness, Choi told the astonished council, so we bring it into the light. We don't punish those who feared us. We invite them to know us better. The chamber erupted in debate. Such mercy seemed incomprehensible to many, a sign of weakness to others. But to those who had begun to understand human thinking, it revealed something profound about these Deathworlders. They had learned that lasting power came not from crushing opposition, but from transforming it. The day Deathworlders proved they don't just win wars, they rule empires. Part 5. The New Paradigm 5. Years passed since the Tauran conflict ended. Admiral Park stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Harmony Station, watching ships from dozens of worlds glide gracefully through the docking procedures. Some vessels bore the sleek, artistic designs typical of Confederation engineering, while others showed the more practical, redundant systems influenced by human approaches. Most interesting were the newer ships that blended both philosophies, beautiful yet resilient, elegant yet adaptable. Quite a view, said a familiar voice. Park turned to see Diplomat Choi joining her at the viewport. His hair had grayed considerably. Over the years, the stress of endless diplomatic missions etched into the lines around his eyes. Yet he moved with the same quiet confidence that had helped forge impossible alliances during the darkest days of the war. Hard to believe this was once a battle zone, Park replied. Now it's the busiest trading hub in 3 sectors. Below them, the massive station hummed with activity. Unlike the purely aesthetic designs of old Confederation architecture, Harmony Station featured both beauty and functionality. Its gardens and plazas provided comfort, while its systems incorporated backup measures and manual overrides, lessons learned from human engineering. The council session starts in an hour, Choi reminded her. Your last official appearance before retirement. Park nodded. After years serving as humanity's senior representative to the Confederation, she was finally stepping down. The integration of Earth into the galactic community no longer required the constant presence of the military leaders who had first opened the door. Any final briefings I should know about? She asked as they walked toward the council chambers. Nothing unexpected. The Tauran representatives will be seated in the 3rd section, opposite the Viridian delegation. They've been cooperating surprisingly well on the border development projects. Park allowed herself a small smile. Not so surprising if you understand Deathworld psychology. Once they recognized each other as worthy opponents, respect followed naturally. The Grand Council chamber of the new Confederation government reflected the changes of the past 5 years. Gone was the purely ceremonial space designed for comfort and aesthetics. The new chamber was beautiful but practical, with emergency protocols built into its design and meeting spaces arranged to facilitate both formal and informal discussions. As Park and Choi entered, representatives from over 100 worlds were already gathering. Some nodded respectfully toward the humans. Others maintained a polite distance. A small group of Tauran delegates stood in conversation with Captain Lee, who had spent the past 3 years working on joint defense initiatives. The Admiral arrives, announced one of the Taurans, inclining his armored head in greeting. Your retirement is the loss of the Confederation. The systems we build should never depend on single individuals, Park replied. That was one of Earth's earliest lessons in governance. The formal council session began with ceremonial acknowledgments of the gathered delegates. Park observed the proceedings with quiet satisfaction. 5 years ago, these same species had barely tolerated human presence. Now many of their worlds had voluntarily adopted aspects of Earth governance, emphasizing adaptability, redundancy, and distributed authority. The Confederation itself had transformed from a rigid, hierarchical structure into something more resilient. Regional councils handled local matters while the central authority focused on coordination. Emergency response teams included members from both gentle and harsh worlds, combining compassion with practicality. "And now," announced the council speaker, "we address the petition from the Toran systems for full membership in the Confederation." A murmur ran through the chamber. For many representatives, memories of the war remained fresh. The speaker continued, "The evaluation committee has reviewed the application and found that the Toran governments have met all criteria for consideration." The committee's report detailed the changes in Toran society, how their expansionist military had been restructured into exploration and emergency response forces, how their resource management had shifted from conquest to sustainable development. Human advisors had worked alongside Toran leaders throughout this transformation, but the changes had come from within their own culture. "We recognize our past errors," said the Toran ambassador, standing to address the council. His ceremonial armor was modified to appear less threatening, though still practical. "For generations we believed survival required constant expansion. The humans showed us another path, not through weakness, but through strength tempered by wisdom." Park listened as various representatives voiced concerns, asked questions, and debated the merits of accepting former enemies. The discussion was passionate but reasoned, with none of the panic that would have characterized such a session years before. Finally, the speaker called for a vote. The result surprised few who had been watching the Confederation's evolution. The Toran petition was accepted by a comfortable margin. As the session moved to other matters, Park felt a subtle vibration from her communications device. An urgent message from Earth Command. Long-range scanners had detected an unknown fleet approaching from beyond the galaxy's edge. Initial readings suggested technology far beyond anything the Confederation had encountered. Park discreetly shared the information with Choi, who raised an eyebrow but maintained his composed expression. They had both lived long enough to know that peace was always temporary, that new challenges inevitably followed old ones. When the council session ended, the speaker, a moderate from one of the original founding worlds, asked Park to say a few words before her retirement became official. She stepped to the central platform, looking out at the gathered representatives of 100 diverse worlds. "5 years ago," she began, "many of you viewed humans with fear and suspicion. You called Earth a death world, and those of us who evolved there dangerous barbarians. Perhaps we were. Perhaps in some ways, we still are." She gestured to the chamber around them. "But look at what we've built together. Not an empire of conquest, but a community that values both strength and compassion, both tradition and adaptation. When the Torans threatened your worlds, you needed our warrior nature. But in rebuilding, you discovered our other qualities, our creativity, our resilience, our ability to find common ground with former enemies." Park paused, thinking of the unknown fleet approaching from beyond the galaxy. A new test was coming, one that would challenge everything the Confederation had become. "The true strength of Deathworlders isn't our ability to fight," she continued. "It's our ability to survive countless challenges and still build something worth protecting. To face an uncaring universe not with fear or anger, but with determined hope." As she concluded her remarks, Park's gaze met that of the Confederation, president across the chamber. A subtle nod passed between them, acknowledgement that the president had already been informed about the approaching fleet. The response was already being organized. Ships moving into defensive positions with practiced efficiency, research teams analyzing the scant data available, diplomatic protocols being prepared. 5 years ago, such a threat would have thrown the Confederation into panic. Today, the response was coordinated and confident, not because humans controlled the response, but because the Confederation had learned from humanity's example while teaching humans the value of cooperation. Later, As Park stood in the station's strategic command center watching the preliminary defense preparations, Captain Lee joined her. "Interesting timing," he said quietly. "A new threat appearing just as you're stepping down." Park watched the tactical displays tracking the movement of Confederation vessels, human ships alongside Tauran destroyers, Viridian science vessels, with their sophisticated sensors and dozens of other species working in coordinated harmony. "Perfect timing," she corrected him, "because now they'll face it not as humans or Taurans or Confederation species, but as a united front that combines the best qualities of each. That's the real victory, Lee. Not that Deathworlders proved we could win wars, but that we showed the galaxy how to build something that lasts." On the main viewer, the first long-range images of the approaching fleet appeared. Strange, asymmetrical vessels unlike anything in known space. Yet Park felt no fear, only a calm readiness. Whatever came from beyond the galaxy's edge would find not a fragmented collection of worlds, but a civilization that had learned the most important lesson Deathworlders had to teach. Adversity doesn't break those who know how to bend, adapt, and grow stronger together.